Welcome to Successful Parenting, where we, Jackie Rue and Robin Choquette, share practical skills for families to build resilience and healthy connections. As practicing professionals and parents ourselves, we hope this podcast is a resource for parents to grow, reflect, and learn more about themselves and their children. Our approach is simple, tangible, and most importantly, we lead with compassion for the integrity of the families we serve. This podcast should not be taken as medical advice and is intended for informational purposes only. We love our work, and we can't wait to watch families gain confidence and open themselves up to new ways of successful parenting.
Good morning, Robin. How are you doing?
I am doing very well. It's a beautiful day here in Kansas City, and I am excited for the weekend. Yeah. How about you? What's going on?
I am doing well. I just actually got back. I've been doing these laser treatments. I think, I have some chronic injuries from sports and from running, which are getting better.
Yes.
I've been struggling with this for probably a year. You just definitely see how it impacts your mindset and your day-to-day life when you're so used to a certain routine, and exercise is such a part of my life that it's definitely altered things. And so I am really excited about the conversation we're going to have today, because athletes and even their families are impacted by different things that can happen during sport.
Yeah. The sport is such a passion. And I agree. I think there's so much in sports. We really are able to connect and learn. And I think it's such a great thing for people to be a part of. It is such a part of so many people's life, and how that really impacts them if for some reason they're injured or unable to participate. I think it's exciting. It's going to be an exciting conversation today.
Well, and our guest expert, I think I heard about him probably 10, 15 years ago. And he's about an hour from where I work in one of my offices. And I remember several families were driving all the way to him to bring their children for sports performance counseling, mental health counseling. It kind of caught my attention. Like, okay, if you're going to drive an hour to go see somebody, then you know it's worth the time, right? And so our guest expert today, Marc Anderson, has been working for over 25 years clinically, as well as he has a lot of experience working in the school setting. But I think one of his biggest highlights is just the impact he's had on the world of sport. He works with individuals of all ages on sports performance issues. He's highly regarded. He's a certified Lead the Leader facilitator through the Jeff Janssen Sports Leadership Center. And he has so many other different certifications and past trainings that have really helped him develop. And, he has a center, Mental Performance Sports. And I know a lot of people really come to him in all sports. The athletes I've spoken to that have talked to him have just raved and said it's made such a difference in their overall mindset and how they ultimately then do in the sport. So welcome, Marc. I am excited to have you.
Hi, Marc. Welcome.
Hi, Jackie and Robin. Thank you for having me today.
We are excited, very excited for today.
Marc, talk to us a little bit about what has brought you to this work, your experience. Where did all of this passion come from?
Well, Jackie, athletics has been a big part of my life since I was 8 years old. Played multiple sports growing up that cultivated my passion and desire to pay it forward with my work with athletes and families. As a high school athlete, I was a two-sport athlete, primarily with football and basketball. That paved the way for me to be a college athlete, where I played basketball at Beloit College, where I was a 4-year letterman. Again, sports is just everything I do. I've been a high school coach for over 25 years. For the last 16 years, I've been a mental performance coach. It's in my blood, and I love what I do.
Did you play Pee Wee football?
I did.
Is that still around, Marc?
Youth football is around. It's actually coming back again with concussions and things like that. It kind of took a hit several years ago, but the numbers are starting to go back up again with technology and what we now know about the brain concussions. But yeah, football actually was one of my primary sports. Okay. Unfortunately, I was just too small to play in college. When I graduated college, I was 5'11", maybe 155 pounds. And the thought about getting hit by big guys anymore did not appeal to me.
Yeah. Helping families to kind of understand it's more than just the sport, right? It's not about football. It's not about soccer. It's not about tennis. It's not about golf. There's so much more that athletes get for their participation. What are some of the things that you really talk about with families and help them to understand?
Well, I think the bigger issues is understanding that historically sports has been viewed as a microcosm of life and society, and trying to get parents to understand that sports builds character and resiliency, and these are lessons that strengthens that character over a lifespan, not just on and off the field, but for the rest of their lives. And some of those key elements is about being a good teammate, that you have a team first mentality. It's not about you, it's about your team. And the lessons that good teamwork teaches them, how to cooperate with others, how to respect and play fair. Talk a lot about sportsmanship, being a good role model on and off the field.
Yeah.
Learning how to win gracefully, but also lose gracefully. I think there's so much in sports now about winning. One of the great lessons I learned as a kid was you had to learn how to lose first in order to be a great winner.
So true.
And I think it's teaching those skills are vitally important. I think emotional regulation, with everything being so high pressured right now with kids, learning to regulate their emotions on a day-to-day basis, how to deal with the highs and lows of sports, because unfortunately, you're not always going to win. The game of baseball is a game of failure. You're going to fail 70% of the time. That's a mindset. And kids have to be learned and taught how to shift their mindset in order to cope with the things that don't go so well.
Well, it's interesting. I love how you said that, Mark. You have to learn how to lose to learn how to win. And I think so often as the adults, we so focus on winning, focus on it. We celebrate it. We emphasize it. We're excited when they win. And I think sometimes message kids get, comes from us.
Absolutely. We are at the forefront of being that example. Our kids model everything that we do, whatever they see, whatever they hear. We are that staple of what they get. There's that old saying, apple tree. So if you got a parent who's always being hostile and critical, guess what? Your kid, you're modeling that. That's what they're going to be like on the field. So those are learned behaviors. So you got to be able to look at yourself as a parent and say, what am I modeling on a day-to-day basis? And is this the person I want to be a reflection of me when they leave my house? I don't think a lot of parents think that way.
Yeah.
And I think that's why they become that kid or they are that parent. And it's not a good look for either one.
One question, Mark, I often talk about values, and I will ask the players, in 20 years, what do you want your teammates, what do you want your trainers, your coaches, those around you, those that are on the sidelines watching, what do you want them to remember about you? And I think that's a great way to have them to dive in, to look at some of the characteristics that you're talking about, to be able to foster that in their passion and in their play.
Absolutely. I know as a coach, I was always taught that, your effectiveness as a coach will be 20 years down the road. What will your players say about you 20 years down the road? And where would their lives be? Now I'm at an age where I've been in the field over 25 years. So I have players who I did coach who are now adults that I can look at and say, wow, I helped them become better young women and young men. And now they're being parents or the way I help parent them as a coach. It's exciting that that you left a legacy of doing the right way all the time.
Absolutely.
And I think as parents, we just get excited for our kids. And I know I did that too, right? Because my kids always played sports and it was easy to get hung up in the game. It's almost like celebrating the win, like we talked about. What are ways you've taught parents to model sportsmanship at games?
First and foremost, just be a parent. One of the greatest lessons my mom passed on to me as a parent was through the highs and lows of life, you got to love them through it. And that has been something that is resonant with me as I parent my two daughters who are now adults, and something that I passed on to my players as well as the parents, that good, bad, or indifferent, you got to love them through it. So one of the greatest tools as a parent is, again, when you're on the field or in the stands, be just a parent. Be positive, be encouraging for all competitors. It's just not about your kid. It's about the organization or the brand that you represent. Not only do you represent your own brand as far as your name, you represent the brand of the organization that you're a part of. Another good tip on modeling sportsmanship is, again, not bad-mouthing the coaches or the parents or the officials.
Right.
Again, I was at a high school basketball game last year, and in 90 seconds, I saw the coach get thrown out of the game after 2 technicals. I saw a player get a technical, and then I saw 4 parents get thrown out of the gym at the same time. That ripple effect of not having good sportsmanship affected not only the game, but affected how that team ended up playing. And what example did that send all those other parents in the crowd when you see a coach get thrown out, one of his players get a technical, and parents, being dismissed from a game? It was very embarrassing. Another tip is, again, focus on what they learned from the game versus did they win or lose. The learning aspect is where they grow as young people. We have already talked about they're going to grow really and learn more from losing than they will from winning. But it's more about what they learn from it versus the reward that they got. We become such a reward-based, society where everybody gets a trophy. And the reality is in life, you don't get trophies for everything that you do. Another great skill is applauding good plays, no matter who makes them. Again, as a parent, you should be there to enjoy the game as a whole, which means your opponent's going to make good plays too. And you want to be able to recognize that. I think that shows that, hey, you're impartial. You're there to enjoy the whole process. And again, that also means congratulating the winners, even if it's not your kid.
Yeah.
That, hey, that team played a great game. Our kids played well. They just came on the short end of the stick, but you want to be able to applaud that as well. These are just some simple tips to help parents, because the reality is your kid may not be the next LeBron or Tiger Woods or Steph Curry. Okay. And you got to be able to accept the good, the bad, and indifferent that comes with that, which means celebrating the whole aspects of the sports experience.
Yeah. What I am hearing you say is, really being in the role that you're in and that you're blessed to be in is the parent, right?
Absolutely.
And I know, and I don't know if either one of you do this, but I know when I go and I'm watching a team play or an individual or whatever, I often move away from the crowd. And it's simply a way not to get engaged into hearing some of the chatter that happens, because so often I hear those who are watching are almost analyzing and going into what's happening out on the court or the field or whatever, and not being there just to enjoy the game. And I think that's what I really hear you talk about as you're saying, enjoy the role of being a parent.
Yes, it's funny that you say that, Robin. As a high school coach, when I would go see my kids play and they went to a different school, I purposely set away from everybody that's with the school, just because of what you just said. You hear things that are uncommon that parents are saying in that group, being criticizing the coach, criticizing other players, criticizing the organization, whatever the case may be. I just didn't want to be a part of that. I wanted to be there as a dad. That was my job, to be a dad, to be there, support my kids, enjoy the process, support the school that they attended. Okay. Again, a lot of times we miss the point. This is supposed to be fun.
Yeah.
Right.
Not only fun for our kids, but also fun for our parents. Okay. And you need to be in a supportive role for all those that are involved.
Absolutely.
Well, and I think that's a good point too. And you and I have talked to Dr. Cliff Saper too. And I remember he said even parents get so heavily involved in their child's sport. Even, they make friends with the other parents that when a child wants to stop doing the sport, it's almost like a loss for the parent. And the parents have such a strong reaction sometimes, because if you think about how much time you spend driving and going to practices and games, it's become such a part of their life. I remember Dr. Saper talked about, he did a group for parents. Parents had such a hard time letting it go.
Yeah, I talk a lot about the grieving process. Athletes go through that same process when they give up a sport, but also parents go through that same process, as you just stated, because it's everything that they've known. This has been their social connectedness, their activity of getting to know other parents and being in that routine that they've, embraced that role with. And now when their kid's not playing, they have a loss. Now, what do I do with myself? Because I don't get to socialize with Mrs. Such and Such, or I don't get to make team dinners anymore and things like that. They have to also go through a shift or transition of letting go and kind of rediscovering their role as a parent.
Yeah. And I think it's so important for parents to understand as they're going through it with their child. Think about the language that you use when describing. I love this statement of, I love to watch you play. Then I also hear parents talk, much what you're saying is how much I love doing all of this. This is so exciting. I remember one athlete I was working with, and they were, I think, a sophomore in high school. So kind of at that age where they're starting to decide, is this really something I want to continue to pursue? Or is it something I want to have fun? Or do I just want to end high school just kind of doing academics and pursuing, my social friendships? And they said to me, but my parents have always been so involved. I think it's going to be hard for them. And they've told me how much they love being a part of the team and all the friends they've made and all the things that you've talked about, Mark. And the child was really thinking a lot about the parents and making the decision of what they wanted to do. In the end, it all ended up really in a great situation. And I encouraged the child to talk about it. And the reason why I really did that was I knew that the parents could able to meet the child and talk about how there could be some sadness around some things that would be gone, but there would also be new opportunities. And I think it's interesting just to have those conversations, but it is a grieving process for all.
Yeah. And I think you've given some good things to think about. And do you have any suggestions for what things parents shouldn't be doing?
Yeah. When it comes down to the do's and don'ts for parents or sports parents, one of the cardinal sins that parents commit, and I think it's a natural sin, if you will, is they always talking about the problem, what their kid is doing, not doing well, and that starts with when they get in the car on the drop off and when they pick back up. Did you hit that skill, or, how did you play today? And did you choke up on the bat, or did you hit your shots today? And stop. You're adding more pressure than giving them motivation. Again, we talk about the 24-hour rule with parents is that you shouldn't talk to your kid about a practice or a game until 24 hours afterwards, so that the kid allows them to self-regulate their mood and their emotions and their thoughts about what's going on. And if they volunteer, then you can have that conversation. Otherwise, you're creating more pressure on them being more self-critical of themselves, of hearing the message of, I'm not good enough because you keep telling me I didn't do this and you didn't do that. You need to do this. Again, it's, shifting that narrative to, are you having fun? If you're having fun, then you know what? I'm loving you for it. So again, it's a fine line between support and pressure. Parents need to also avoid that if this, then trap. If this, then that, which means bribery. If you do this, then I'll help you get that. You're teaching them really good manipulative skills now.
Right.
Those skills are not the life skills we want them to have. And it shouldn't be a tit for tat thing in order for them to improve.
Yeah.
I'll get you that new glove if you do this or do that. If you go out there and you work on your game. Well, if they work on the game, they're going to improve regardless. This shouldn't have to be something at the end of the rainbow for them to get. But a lot of times parents put that extra pressure on them thinking that's a motivator. And actually it's something that creates more pressure and them looking at their self-esteem and self-worth as being less than. Another trap that parents fall into is, they get into this threatening aspect that if you don't do this, then I'm not going to continue to support you. What? You're supporting them because your child's invested in doing something. It was a two-way commitment. You were helping them with the financial piece. They're doing their part to participate and having fun. Their happiness shouldn't be around what they do or what they don't do on and off the field. Okay. You don't want to get them into this compliant mentality because that doesn't build self-motivation or self-reliance. Again, so it's helping parents shift their thinking as well as the athlete thinking from thinking too much about what they're doing to trusting that what they're doing will eventually pay off. That's why you hear that phrase, trust the process. Well, guess what? Growth is a process. Again, no one came out their mom's womb walking and talking. It was a process. Well, athletically, for them to get from point A to point B, to have peak performance, that's a process too. And you got to be able to trust that. And threatening someone undermines that self-trust and self-reliance that athletes need in order for them to grow in any endeavor in sports.
Well, and Mark, one thing too, and you made me think about something I remember when my kids were younger, what was tricky when, you see kids that are like in third or fourth or fifth grade, and some kids just develop faster than others. Some kids, it just becomes easier at younger ages. And I remember you would see those kids that just had to work so much harder. And then as they got older and those kids that had developed that work ethic had kind of, started to more physically mature, the kids that it came easy for at younger ages, they struggled, as they got older because they didn't know when the other kids kind of caught up to them, they didn't have that just natural tendency to work hard. And they became really frustrated and a lot of times burnt out.
Absolutely. And that's why working with younger kids, helping them understand that everybody develops at different stages, different time. Again, I was a late bloomer myself. I grew 4 inches my sophomore year in college, which helped me tremendously in basketball. But I didn't have it in high school, so I had to learn how to work around those and use and develop my talent and skills in other ways. That work ethic set me apart to be more of a functional adult, which is why sports is considered a microcosm, because all those life skills have now transferred over into life where now I'm functional. That's our ultimate goal as a parent. Can we love our kids enough to put them in a position so that we can help shape them to be functional and successful adults?
Finding ways to foster that internal motivation, drive, I think is so important. And I think a lot of the things that you're talking about here is how we externalize those. We don't see that sustaining for a long time, right? Those external motivators.
No. Another cardinal rule is don't talk about money. A lot of times, especially in today's youth sports where there's travel this and travel that, these parents are spending almost a college tuition before these kids even get to high school to be in all these specialized sports. And when their kid is not measuring up to their talent or ability, then the money becomes the issue of we're investing all this money in you, and you're not out there working, you're not improving. Well, the process is there are going to be more failures than success early on. But failure is not your enemy. Failure is your friend. Failure lets you know how you need to improve and what you need to improve on. And it sets up this division between, my self-worth is based on the financial price of what you put on helping me get into activities. Well, now you're setting up this division in your relationship with your child.
Yeah, so true. So true. Well, Marc, I think it's time for us to start winding it down. Is there anything else that you want to say before we go into our 3 questions that we ask every guest? Is there any other tidbit you want to leave with our listeners to think about?
I think, some of the quick tidbits is focus on what's going well with your child. Okay, again, the question is, what did you learn from today's practice or game? Okay, so you keep it more positive. Focus on their effort. Okay, that if they're giving great effort, that's what you're most proud of. A lot of kids that I work with are perfectionistic and they have these high expectations. And until you can break those expectations down to them being more goal oriented, you want to help them focus on the effort. And the effort is what you want to celebrate. I had a runner recently that finished a race, and that's what we focused on, those small wins.
Yeah.
The small wins was a year ago, she quit in the middle of the race. So that win was, hey, you finished, let's build on that. We're not worried about the time. We're worried about how do we build on that success going into your next race.
You know what's funny about that, Marc? We always joke, just because when I run marathons and stuff, the first thing anyone asks you every time is, what was your time, or what time are you going for?
Mm-hmm.
And we laugh because it's so much pressure, because you're talking about a 26-mile run and every focus is to the minute, to the second. Like, what time are you going to get? What time are you shooting for? What time? You lose sight of what it's really all about.
Yes. And I think that's where I've really had a lot of success with a lot of my cross country and track runners is we focus less on the time and focus more on the process.
Yes.
How did they enjoy each phase of the race? And what did they do, effectively or not effectively during that race? And just focus on correcting that versus the time. Because to be a state champion, doesn't matter what your time, as long as you cross the finish line first, you're going to get a medal.
That's true.
That's true.
So they kind of laugh like, wow, you're right. I never thought about it that way. Okay.
Yes.
But, the other thing is also listen more than you talk. You want to make sure you're having that ratio of 75 of your kid talking and you 25 listening, or you talking, okay, or 75 you listening. So that allows you to be a empathetic ear, because if they all hear you just talking all the time, they're eventually just going to tune you out. And no matter if you're giving great advice or not, it's not going to register with them.
Yes. Charlie Brown teacher.
Absolutely. Again, you're not their coach, you're their parent. Let their coach do all the corrections, the feedback and things like that. That's why they're in that sport, or that's why you're paying that specialized coach. You want to have a neutral stance with your kid so that they can come to you as a father or mother, not a supplemental coach, because we all are part of that village. And everybody has to play a role in that village. And you can't wear multiple hats. Otherwise, you're going to lose sight of the relationship with your child.
Yes.
I agree 100%. I agree definitely with that.
Well, Marc, we are to the point that we're going to give you the opportunity to answer our 3 questions that we ask every guest. Now, you may choose to answer 1, 2, or all 3. That's really up to you. It's your choice. Number 1, what did you do as a child or a teenager that would drive your parents crazy? Number 2, what is the biggest difference between children and teenagers today and when you grew up? And then number 3, what does successful parenting mean to you? Marc, what do you think? 1, 2, or all 3? Whatever you want, take it away.
I think I'll look at number 2.
Okay.
I think from a sports standpoint, I think the biggest difference is we learned how to play the game. We were always in the backyard, in the sandlot, on the playground, learning just to have fun.
Mm-hmm.
Sports was fun. We didn't have parents all around us all day long because it was just us. We learned to create our own rules. We learned how to play as a team. We learned how to resolve conflicts all by ourselves. Today's generation doesn't know those skills because they've been in organized sports since the first day they touched a bat or touched a ball or shot a hoop. So they've been robbed of some of those life skills because they never had a chance to practice them. Part of the challenge is kids developing that work ethic. Well, if they never play by themselves or play with other kids, they don't know how to work because work has always been by another adult, always been structured. To get to that next level in every sport, you got to have some type of selfishness where you're away from everyone else and you're working on your craft. Today's kids don't know how to do that. Their craft is sitting in front of a TV on a screen. They can do that. But for them to go out there and get in the driveway and shoot hoops for 2 hours, not going to happen because they haven't been instructed how to do that. And I think that's the biggest challenge is teaching those work ethic skills within the team concept that you still need the team, but also need the time away from the team where you work on your craft so that you can bring that and translate it back into team play. I see that as the biggest difference between today's youth and youth of yesteryear.
Mark, I so appreciate this conversation. And I know so many parents ask us about their children that are in sports and are experiencing a lot of anxiety and stress, or even like theater and band and things like that. And so a lot of times we talk about kind of looking at how the child's functioning. And if they're really stressed out, like you said, listen more, because a lot of times our kids are scared to say, this is too much or I can't handle it. And they're trying to please. But ultimately, I see a lot of athletes that report, not feeling well and headaches and migraines. So one of the things I loved about the conversation today is just really talking about, as adults, taking a step back and allowing, our children to have fun and realize they can experience failure. They can experience loss. And so I like that, you're a resource. And I think, if parents are out there, I think, Mark, you have virtual services as well, right? As well as in person.
Absolutely.
So I think it's great. The more I think working with even athletic directors and gym teachers and things like that, and how we even look at gym class and how we look at teaching kids about sport, we're going to see that they're going to start to feel better and even perform better.
Absolutely.
So I thank you so much for being here. And we are going to share your contact information. And like I said before, I'd like to do some more work with you. And I just love your knowledge and what you bring to the game.
Well, thanks, Jackie. I appreciate you and the opportunity for you and Robin having me on this morning.
Yes, thank you so much, Mark. It's always great to hear you speak. You always come away with something that is very thought-provoking. So thank you for sharing this morning with us.
My pleasure.
Thank you, listeners. Look for the details in our description. And don't forget, you can answer the question, what does successful parenting mean to you? If you go into the Spotify app, there is an opportunity to engage with us. We look forward to hearing from you, and we hope everyone has a great day. Thank you, Jackie.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you for joining us, and make sure to subscribe and like us to catch our next episode, where we will take you on a journey to find new ways of successful parenting.